Hey, let's jump right into the immune portion of the immune system since we've already talked about the lymphatic system and the organs. Now let's talk about those immune system cells. So, what is our immune system? It's the cells that protect us from infection and or harmful substances. In general, the immune system is composed of cells, not organs. So it's multiple cells and chemicals that are produced by those cells. The immune system functions to provide us with an immunity to certain diseases, and the type of immunity and the type of function that occurs is specific to infectious agents. So, what are infectious agents? They are organisms or materials that can cause damage or death. And if they cause harm, they're called pathogens. So there are 5 major categories of pathogens: bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoans, and things like worms that can cause us harm. And so, what makes up our immune system? The immune system is composed of white blood cells. All of our white blood cells are formed in the bone marrow, and there are 3 types of white blood cells known as your granulocytes. They're the fills, and then there are macrophages or monocytes that become macrophages, and then we have our lymphocytes, which are our actual immune system cells. So the granulocytes are the neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. And if you click on your neutrophil here, you'll go to a video showing how neutrophils move. Then we have our monocytes, which when activated become macrophages, and macrophages are the professional phagocytes that move through our blood, and they also are found within a lot of our tissues. Finally, we have our lymphocytes. So we have B and T lymphocytes, which are our specific immune defenders. And then we have natural killer cells, which are non-specific defenders. So where are these immune system cells found? Because they're not an organ system, they're just cells. They're found mainly in structures of the lymphatic system, as well as in some epithelial tissue, the mucous membrane, and in certain connective tissues. Oh, mentioned quickly, lymphatic tissues, things like lymph nodes, spleen, tonsils, mucosal associated lymphatic tissue. This is where we're going to find the majority of our B and T lymphocytes, macrophages, as well as natural killer cells. But we also have other areas where we're going to find macrophages. So we'll find macrophages in our lungs, in our brain. There are macrophages found in our epithelium. And so some of these are permanent or fixed macrophages, and some are wandering, they move around. So in the epithelial tissue, we have dendritic cells. Dendritic cells are derived from our macrophage or our monocytes. So they're basically epithelial macrophages. And then they engulf pathogens and they can send signals. They can also move through into our blood if we need to. We have mast cells in our connective tissue. Mast cells are similar in function to basophil cells. They release heparin and histamine, and they're going to influence an allergic response, inflammation, when any type of pathogen interacts with them. Many of our white blood cells can produce chemicals called cytokines that are going to influence either non-specific or specific defenses. And so our eosinophils release chemicals that help in producing inflammatory responses or help in decreasing inflammatory responses. We have helper T cells that produce chemicals that activate immune system cells. And so these chemicals are called cytokines. They are similar in acting like a hormone, so they can act on the cell that releases it. That's called an autocrine cytokine, or a local area, so right around them, that would be a paracrine cytokine. And then they can also move through and activate cells that are far away, and that would be more of an endocrine activating cytokine. So what do cytokines do? It depends on the type of cytokine, but they can regulate the immune system. They control different effects of the immune system. They can activate or inactivate inflammatory responses, and they can also act as weapons and basically kill cells. So there are different types of cytokines. We have interleukin 2, interleukin 4. These are cytokines that activate immune system responses. Tumor necrosis factor stimulates death of cells. We've talked about colony stimulating factor and activating the production of different cells. So like granulocyte colony stimulating factor to produce different granulocytes. And then we have interferon produced by almost all of our body cells that will produce a non-specific defense against viruses. So there are two major categories of the immune system. We have our innate defense mechanisms, and then we have adaptive immunity. So innate defenses are things that our body is born with and our body can use to protect us from any and all pathogens. So there are two lines to the innate or nonspecific defenses. First line is the skin and mucous membranes. The second line are the different chemicals produced by our cells, as well as white blood cells like neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, and even our macrophages. Under the adaptive defenses, then, these are things that we produce as we come in contact with pathogens. Our body produces an immune response and then produces a memory to that immune response. And so the third line of defense includes your lymphocytes like B and T cells, antibodies, and macrophages are part of both the nonspecific and specific. So it's here, but they're in both. But lymphocytes and antibodies are only found in that third line of defense, okay? So how the categories differ is in the different cells that are involved and how they respond. So if you are an innate defense, then you're going to respond the same way in the same amount of time with every single pathogen. It doesn't matter if you are an Ebola virus or if you are a rhinovirus, innate defenses attack equally. Specific defenses, so your adaptive defenses, are going to be specialized to kill one type of organism or one type of pathogen, that's what I'll say, because viruses aren't organisms. And so they're going to attack and they're going to produce an army against that one pathogen. And so if the pathogen happens to be the rhinovirus and there's an Ebola virus also in the system, the Ebola virus is not going to be touched by those immune system cells. They don't care about Ebola. They only want to attack the rhinovirus. Oh, and this figure, I should mention, is just showing innate defense mechanisms and then adaptive defenses, okay? And so I've talked a little bit about innate already. They protect us from numerous pathogens. These are the defenses we're born with. So it includes our skin, our mucous membranes, as well as chemicals produced by our cells. Includes certain white blood cells, and it does not require any previous exposure. The response is always going to be the exact same, and it's going to be immediate. Adaptive then is going to be your B and T lymphocytes. Of course, macrophages are found in both, which I mentioned before, but B and T lymphocytes are always going to be only in the adaptive immunity. They respond to only one type of pathogen. So we have lots of T cells, and each T cell can be specific to any type of pathogen, but they only will respond to one type of pathogen. They don't respond to other pathogens. Once they are activated, they respond to one pathogen and one pathogen only. They will eliminate that pathogen, but it takes days, multiple days, to become effective, which is why when you have an illness, the adaptive immune system will fight it off, but it usually causes you to be sick for a week or so. Think of the colds that you've had. Usually you get ill, it takes about a week, and then your symptoms start to go down because your immune system starts really working, producing those armies of lymphocytes that can actually have an effect on the pathogen. So we're gonna get into the innate defense mechanisms, but I think I'm gonna save that for the next video. So hopefully I can get all of them in one video. I don't know if I can, but this has already been 12 minutes, so I'll stop here and we'll get into the innate defenses in our next video. Bye.